I taught my bird to whistle like a referee. I can make a free throw when I'm down on one knee. I've been a fan of basketball since I was 5. Now I am a fan of HoopSpeak Live. Hilarious analysis, a mystifying trope. An angel with a cudgel breaking bubbles of soap. Like honeybees buzzing around a hive. Yeah, everybody buzzing about HoopSpeak Live.
Hey, welcome to HoopSpeak Live. I'm Beckley Mason with our co-hosts, Ethan Sherwood-Strauss and Zach Harper. We've got a great guest today, friend of the program, Kevin Arnovitz. Today's show is brought to you by Earl! As in Earl Clark, who has been a lot of fun to watch for the Lakers. And, it's nice to see some athleticism on the court with them. And also Earl's starting spot, no longer Pow's starting spot. Good luck with that, figuring that out in LA. We will talk about that today. We will also talk about the Clippers. We'll talk about the Grizzlies in their trade. And we'll talk about Steph Curry. But first, let's talk about Pau Gasol. Guys, he's been coming off the bench. What do you think of how the Lakers are handling this whole situation with him, and what should his role be for this team?
Well, he's not some grand victim. There's this schizophrenic way of dealing with Pau Gasol where either he's playing really well and people aren't giving him enough credit like a few years ago, or he's playing badly and people are blaming everybody but Pau Gasol. That's his starting spot to defend. He's got to play well. Earl Clark is out playing him, and Pau was playing poorly before D'Antoni got there. So I don't understand how everybody's blaming D'Antoni for just admitting the reality of the situation, looking at how Gasol isn't helping that much, and making a decision based on that.
I think that it's everybody's fault. That's the weird thing about this Lakers season is we're just looking for what's the problem. The problem is everybody. Like, D'Antoni's not coaching well. Pau is playing like crap. Kobe's not playing any defense. Dwight has been hobbled. Steve Nash doesn't play any defense, and he's not that aggressive. Their bench sucks. Like, really the most consistent part of the season has been Ron Artest. Like, think about that for a second. That's the problem.
I think you're selling Robert Sacre a little bit short there. But, Artest has been consistently Artesting all season. What do you guys think about basically, what if they traded, let me throw this out here, traded Dwight and moved Pau to the 5 and played him with Earl and maybe got some help from Dwight? Do you think that people are freaking out about Dwight because this is, LA, this is the Lakers, or is this like something weird that really is not going to get resolved?
That would be a very bold move. And I do believe that Pau would be better. He would play better if he were at the 5. That's another component to this. But it's one that people...
Better than Pau now.
I don't think he'd play better than Dwight Howard right now, but he'd, how now, Pau? It just sounds like how now, brown cow, whatever you say now in Pau. But better than Pau now. And so that would be a big gamble. I don't know if it's one the Lakers are prepared to take. It seems as though they were pot committed, as the poker term goes, with building around Dwight Howard, and none of us know what the status of his back is. What I find funny about this whole situation is that a lot of the projections had the Lakers, the more analytical projections, had them slated for 53 wins or around that territory. In some alternate universe, Dwight Howard has come back completely healthy, and the Lakers are on pace for 53 wins, and people are freaking out about what a disappointment this team is. This team has been such a colossal disappointment per the expectations, in part because the expectations just didn't have much of a relationship with reality and didn't want to acknowledge that back surgery is a real thing.
Right, but here's the problem is the people who didn't project the Lakers to be awesome are pretending they expected them to be 7 games under 500.
No, nobody, I didn't expect that. No. Yeah.
The thing, I have the solution. I know how to fix the Lakers. Dwight needs to have fewer minutes right now to get healthy. Powell wants to start. You start them together. You play them for 3 minutes together. Then Powell moves to the bench. Dwight plays his regular rotation. You bring in Powell to play, 24 minutes in a game as the best six-man big man off the bench. And he still gets to start, which seems to be an issue for him right now. And they get to use him by himself. They get to use Dwight by himself for most of the game. And there's this perfect conglomerate. And also in this scenario, Jody Meeks becomes Ray Allen.
Oh, yeah. Of course.
Oh, I love there was a note in Kevin Ding's ethering of Howard in the Lakers today in the Orange County Register when he said that Dwight brought a stat sheet into the locker room post-game to show people on the paper how few shot attempts he had gotten. That's just not that I don't know. Everything about that is just so terrible for kind of what the Lakers are trying to establish. This idea that Howard was going to continue to get 18 shots a game when Kobe Bryant was replacing Jason Richardson and Metta World Peace. Metta World Peace going to get his shots. It's gonna. You can't. He's gonna get his 10 a game. It sounds like a disaster in that locker room.
What I like right now is that Dwight is still being the same Dwight we saw the last 2 years in Orlando, and this is like a revelation to LA media. What I like is there's a big push right now to put all the blame on Dwight and just be like, Kobe's out there taking bad shots because he has to. There's nothing wrong with Kobe right now.
Yeah, that's the LA tradition, is to shift blame away from Kobe Bryant, and because it's all about the championships in LA don't matter as much as the fact that Kobe Bryant won them. That's why people are walking around with shirts that say 5 rings and whatnot, because something odd happened back in the mid-2000s when the team was terrible and they only had all their pride was vested in Kobe Bryant stringing together consecutive 50-point games, where in the minds of many Laker fans, he is the thing to invest their self-esteem in. So that Kobe-Laker dynamic is always there. I would put more blame on him defensively than anything else. He's been just a horrid defender this season and a very good offensive player. As far as the whole blame game and how it's working, I do think it's funny. I'm not exactly going to vouch for the job that D'Antoni's done. It's a little strange to place so much blame on D'Antoni right after those same people were placing so much blame on Mike Brown. Maybe the problem isn't the coaching if 2 guys in a row couldn't do anything with this team. Maybe it's something else.
Right. 2 very different players. There's a great that Bulls game. There's this great moment where they ran like a very basic baseline double screen for Rip Hamilton. Earl Clark, it starts. Earl Clark has no idea what's going on. He's like 6 feet behind before he even gets to the first screen. Ron Artest sees that and just goes with Rip Hamilton along the baseline. Carlos Boozer ends up with no one within 10 feet of him, like right under the hoop. And it's those sorts of mistakes that really like have you scratching your head, because they make awful mistakes on defense. And then they, you have the occasional Metta World Peace or Kobe Bryant 25-foot shot with 19 seconds left on the shot clock. There's as you said, Zach, there's just everyone is to blame. All right, well, let's go to something that's a lot happier and certainly more functional, and that's Steph Curry's jumper. Ethan and I basically every day after one of his games will be just talking on G-Tag. Sorry, Zach, glowing about the Steph Curry shooting extravaganza. What's it like to watch that in person?
It's awesome. It's a lot of fun. It's an adjustment of expectations. When most NBA players or even really good shooters set their feet for a 3-point shot, I don't expect it to go in. With Steph Curry, I do expect it, because I would believe that the statistics bear that out. The misses, the 4% of misses or whatnot that put him below 50% on those probably mostly come when he's shot hunting or he's heat checking or super contested. You think it's going in, and that has a great impact on the offense. It's a little strange to make Curry analogous to somebody like Randy Moss, but when teams are scared, when teams are frightened by him moving around off the ball, it generates looks and it generates space for other people And suddenly Jarrett Jack becomes the Dante Culpepper of that equation, and he's racking up better statistics because of Curry's presence.
Yeah, the Curry Jack Thompson dynamic is really funny because, it does make Jared Jack look incredible because all of a sudden there's like nobody helping from either wing. The other thing that I love about that team is the transition threes where they'll throw it up one sideline and everyone will run to, it'll be like Curry, and if he doesn't have it right away, they'll throw the skip to the other side, Klay Thompson. Like, neither of them have any thoughts of cutting to the basket as they're running down the wing. They're just like, get it to me just over half court. I'm now in range. And there's a great piece by Kevin Draper on HoopSpeak about the particular impact of Curry shooting off the dribble, which I think is really tremendous because, as he talked about in that piece, no one shoots well off the dribble from three, but the Warriors do, and Curry does. And that really kind of allows all these offensive pieces where they can ping the ball around to fall into place without having a great penetrator.
Yeah, and that was a really good piece. No, Zach, you shut up. It's Curry time. You stay there.
Let's stop talking about shooting. His shooting doesn't matter. I want to talk about that bounce pass he threw yesterday against the Clippers. Play. That was fantastic.
That was a great play, but it's funny. I have seen him make plays like that, and it just shows you that there's a different aura around this team, that people are noticing a play like that. Because I saw that, and I thought, oh, that was so cool. I didn't expect it to be such a topic and to be referenced on Deadspin. The other play, when we talk about the transition threes, and you were talking about they're just going to not pass to each other sometimes when they have the look. I loved when Jarrett Jack threw an outlet pass to Steph Curry on a fast break, and Klay Thompson was wide open for a layup, and Curry just totally ignored him and shot it. And it ties into a certain aggressiveness. We talk about aggressiveness in basketball as a platitude in terms of attacking the rim. I'm writing on this today, but the Warriors are aggressive in another way. They're aggressive with their shot attempts. Almost anytime you see the Warriors get a quick, clean offensive rebound that's kicked out, that guy's shooting. They are shooting immediately. There's no reset. They're just going for the shot right there when they have it. So I like that. I frankly think it might tie into Mark Jackson's ethos as a swaggering braggart. The Warriors' shooting confidence.
Yeah, they do kind of remind you of a mix between the Suns and Spurs, where they'll just, once they get the three-pointers clicking, like, they can just score. Not these Suns, I should point out. The Suns, as anyone remembers them, because no one watches them anymore. But the way that ball gets up court and they fire it up quickly. All right, speaking of swaggy braggarts, let's bring on our guest. You know him from True Hoop and Clipper Blog, Kevin Arnovitz.
Am I a braggart?
He's Kevin Arnovitz.
Hey, man.
You called me a swaggy braggart.
Yeah, it was a compliment.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Let's start Clippers. Give us our Bledsoe update. Things kind of hit a lull there, a little bit of a trough. Is he recovering? How's he playing these days?
He's recovering, and what's notable to me is that Vinny Del Negro is starting to leave him on the floor in key moments as his defensive two. One thing that's happening is slowly and gradually, Del Negro is becoming comfortable going with a four-wing small lineup with Griffin at the 5. What that does essentially, in a certain sense, it's an analog of OKC, right? There are times when Brooks wants Cephalosha on the floor, doesn't want to sacrifice spacing. Those are the moments when Durant moves to the 4, and then they keep Ibaka or whoever out there. The Clippers did that a bit yesterday against the Warriors, and what it does is it allows Bledsoe to be that Cephalosha. They need him on the ball against certain guys, i.e. Steph Curry. I think tonight against Oklahoma City, I won't be surprised if Bledsoe gets some serious minutes, working on Westbrook. And still the Clippers maintaining Crawford in the game, or Barnes, or some combination of Barnes, Hill, and Crawford, obviously with Chris Paul. And so in certain sense, yeah, he's come off that high at the beginning of the season, but he's also I think he's got a coach now who's starting to trust him defensively.
I like the idea of Bledsoe channeling his inner Cephalosha. It's just those aren't two players I necessarily connect, but it makes sense in that analogy. I would love to get a breakdown from you, Kevin, as somebody who watches closely of Blake Griffin's defense, because that's been a topic a lot of people have discussed. I've said that he might be too stubby to be an elite defender, but in some ways, because of his mobility, he seems like the prototypical guy you'd want tracking a stretch four. So, what is the scouting report on Blake's defense? A part of his game that I don't think we talk a lot about, other than derisively, conventionalism-wise.
The big difference this year, and it sounds really simplistic, is he knows where the hell to go. Last year, I think the staff was very, very reluctant to let him do much more than cover a screen and roll flat. Because if he showed hard, now he's got to get back in the play. Blake didn't instinctively know where to go. Again, it's the jumping out, and why guys like, say, Noah and Garnett are so good at it. It's not so much that they show high really well and they get, they sort of block off the right path for the point guard. It's also that they can do that, because Blake can do that. Most bigs can do that. It's that they then know where to go from there. Because the minute you show, now you got to either get back, pick up the other big. If there's been a rotation, maybe now you're out in the corner. And Blake simply knows where to go, and kind of talking about it with him. It's the sequence of defensive events that have to occur for a four to be effective in a half-court set. And he's got that down. And that what they're allowing him to do is now he can use his speed, because nobody is quicker than that guy. And he can get back to the back line, to the corner. And I was rewatching the Thunder Clipper game from November, and it was funny, for a period they actually had Blake, when they were still big and Oklahoma City was small, they actually had Blake covering Cephalosha in the corner, which was really interesting for about 3 or 4 possessions until Vinny got the smaller guys in the game. But yeah, he's never going to be a great post defender, but I think we're learning is how many fours in this league play the post now? How many of them really demand a guy pounding up against him? It's almost stopped being this essential qualification for a defensive four. I mean, pick and roll defense is more important than ever. It's really pick and pop defense mostly on most of these fours now. But in a certain sense that, well, he gets beat up in the post, he's undersized in the post, he can't block shots or protect the rim because he's not long enough. I'm not saying it's irrelevant, but it's less so.
Kevin, I've been skywriting Jamal Crawford's name for years. Just getting in my plane, chugging along, throwing out the smoke in a JC formation. When the Clippers were here last week, I was talking to the locker room about a piece I was doing on Jamal Crawford, and a lot of them mentioned his passing ability, and it was almost like this, hey, let's make sure everyone knows he's just not a scorer, like he can pass the ball. Have you noticed that this year, that he is become a much better passer than he was in the past?
I think he's always been a good passer, and in fact, not a willing passer necessarily, but a good one. And the first thing when you even have a question for Jamal that suggests or somehow contextualizes, I know a lot of people think you're a chucker or you shoot a lot. He'll be like, wait a minute, I've averaged 4.5 assists for my entire career. And he throws out that number. 4.5 assists for my entire career. He is so defensive about it, and in a legitimate way. I mean, defensive in the sense that he feels like he's shown capable work in that area, and that, to suggest that he's a lousy passer or he was, too focused on shooting to cultivate that skill. He gets kind of, and he's right. You go to look at the stats, and his assist rates are pretty good. I mean, part of it is that he played the one for a while. Particularly in the Eastern Conference early in his career. And so, he certainly has, a bunch of assists racked up from those years. But, I mean, it's not to say there aren't things that are available on the floor when Jamal Crawford is dribbling the ball, and he should be looking elsewhere. But he's a pretty good passer. I mean, I've seen him make some really nice passes.
Hey, I really enjoyed your post on True Hoop today on the Cephalosha-Paul matchup. You are, again, a charter member of the Tabo fan club. We saw what he did to Tony Parker in the playoffs. Should the Clippers be worried that in the future, this is going to be a matchup issue for them over a 7-game series?
Now they're just gonna have to start running some stuff like that New York Knicks triple screen. What was so interesting about the Thanksgiving Eve game was how eagerly the Clippers were to get a switch from Martin or Westbrook onto Chris, and how very adamant the Thunder were not to let that happen. Even there were a couple instances where they actually had a third defender kind of move over to Paul just to buy time for Cephalosha on those instances when he did get hung up, because DeAndre Jordan or Blake Griffin or Lamar Odom set a very solid screen. They're like, just to buy time for Cephalosha to get back onto Paul. But, he's 6'8", and, Chris had trouble shooting over him on that Thanksgiving Eve game. He had trouble getting a layer of space around him that he really needs to operate. And I think it's not as much a story of Chris Paul as I think the Thunder have become a really much better defensive team this season. I noticed they were 6th in efficiency when I looked this morning, which is, up from about 10 last season. And they're starting, I think, they're very similar to the Clippers in this sense. Length and speed are really good defensive assets. We tend to think of good defensive teams as these brawny, physical types. And I just think that speed and length, and the Heat, I think, taught us that more than anything, are really important. I'd rather have those guys than these notion of these beefy post defenders, which really aren't that useful anymore. I think Perkins in some ways personifies the portrait of the old school defensive big, right? And he's very good defensively, and he's very good at what he does. And in some ways, guys like Ibaka, DeAndre Jordan, Griffin, and not to say there haven't been big guys who can leap and protect the rim and block shots in the past, but I think that speed and length are really good defensive attributes if they're applied, but it requires a staff that knows how to apply them in order to get the most out of those attributes.
I would agree there. My question, and it's probably our last Clippers question, Jamal Crawford for the All-Star team, crazy insane or insane crazy?
I just think he's like a distant fifth. And so I just don't see how, if someone can make the case of him over Harden, Westbrook, Parker, and Curry, and I don't put them in any significant order, maybe I would reverse that order. Great, but I just don't see a reasonable case. Well, Kobe's starting, so now we're out of the equation. Oh, okay. So it's and also I don't know that I put him ahead of Kobe. I certainly wouldn't put him ahead of Kobe. And so, and Chris Paul. So here's a guy who might very well have a very strong case to be the 7th best guard, in the Western Conference, and I just don't think that gets you on the All-Star team. And then there are other guys.
He was playing this way. That pool is significantly more shallow. Let's talk about the Grizzlies, and specifically, I'm curious about, they've had these offensive problems that seem to go away at the start of the year. My theory is that this is just a team that was very comfortable with each other. They came into the league with this year with a little leg up. Other teams have sort of caught up, and we're seeing a lot of the same offensive issues that we've seen from this team over the last 3 seasons. At what point do you look at Lionel Hollins' influence and wonder if he is really getting all that he can out of this roster?
I look at that roster and I just think, there's no reason this should be a 22nd ranked offensive team. And that's even acknowledging that they have no outside shooting. There's not a lot of depth. I do think I think you do have to look at Henry Bibby, who designs much of the offense, and just say, look, you're right. They aren't maximizing, the attributes of these guys. Here are a couple of things. One is that starting lineup doesn't do horribly. They're about a 104.5, I think, on offensive efficiency. It's just when you look at other starting lineups around the league, they sort of pad that efficiency because invariably, they might have a bench that isn't that good, particularly teams that aren't deep. The Grizzlies are never going to get great offensive numbers from their bench as currently constituted. And this morning, it's less constituted than it was 24 hours ago.
Let the terrible rain begin.
That's the thing. The winner of the Memphis-Cleveland deal is Roten. No question. They have Delonte West coming in, and that should be interesting to see how he sort of, whether or not he can shoot proficiently. Because if they can get some outside shooting from that spot. Also, I'd love to see West get to a point where if they need him over Tony Allen in the closing minutes just to stretch, that's great. But I don't want to beat a dead horse because I think the guy's taken a lot of abuse. But you just can't. If you're going to insist on giving an enormous portion of your possessions to Rudy Gay, you're not going to have an efficient offense. It's sort of like I call it the DeRozan rule. Like if that's going to be where you assign a plurality of your offensive possessions, you're not going to have an efficient. It's impossible to have an efficient offense. And you ask the Grizzlies the same question. It's like, you ask other people the same question. Well, how many 6'9" guys at the three can get a shot off over anyone? Like, this is the thing you hear when people want to defend Rudy Gay. And it's like, and it's that old argument that analytics and oriented people get into with non-analytics oriented people, which is, this notion that, well, the ability to create a shot a priori, irrespective of whether or not those shots go in, is somehow in and of itself an asset. And what we're learning is no. I mean, the guy's got, I think, a per this morning below 15, which is league average. I don't think he's any real prize defensively. I mean, his length, they do good things with, and I think, no, I mean, look, I don't want to insult him there because they're the second-ranked defense in the league, but I just don't think there's enough there to justify the usage. And, they can continue to wring their hands. Why are we so weak defensively, and why can't we get anything going? And it's like, well, look at your so-called creators. And, I mean, what are you getting from Gay? I think in some ways the deal's disappointing only insofar as it now absolves them for having to take on this Rudy Gay thing head on. And, I mean, again, he's a scapegoat. He's not the reason solely that they're 22nd in offensive efficiency, but he's a part of it. He's a huge part of it because the reason we know is because he's using a huge number of those possessions.
Yeah, not only is he using those possessions before Zach or Ethan follow, but, they're getting him a lot of those in basically unscripted ISOs where they just empty out a side of the court and have him go. He's not coming off of curls 15 times a game and getting his shots there. They're not making him Rip Hamilton. They're trying to make him Carmelo Anthony. And I think his ability to read the second line of the defense is just not good enough to have him in those situations.
Kevin, I think that I agree with your points about the Memphis offense, but they are a team that prides themselves on grit and grind and being more powerful and being stronger than their opponents. And could it be looked at as Rudy Gay is a 6'9" small forward who can get a shot off against anybody, and it is a plus because you've got Zach Randolph, probably the best offensive rebounder in the league, down there, so you're kind of hopefully playing the percent. I mean, it's not a great percentage, but could that be part of the attack of, hey, even if we miss shots, Marc Gasol and Zach Randolph are down there to beat guys up and get the
if your goal is to lead the league in Kobe assists, perhaps. But I think, and don't do this the wrong way, but I think the logic that he misses a lot of shots, but wow, they have really good offensive rebounders. It is just not a recipe for a good offensive efficiency. I mean, to Beckley's point, it's like, I mean, he actually does come off curls. He'll catch the ball, and then it immediately becomes an isolation. Like the momentum that a curl is supposed to facilitate for a guy. Like the idea of a curl is you're supposed to get, what it does is it offers you separation from your guy coming up from the baseline or the corner or wherever it is you're curling from, right? And it's like, you'll watch, and it's like, all right, they're running him off a curl. Like, look at that nice down screen. He'll catch the ball. He'll sort of stagger for a second. The guy will eventually get – it's like almost as if he's often waiting for his defender to get back in the play. And where, you see other guys, and the Spurs are really good at this. Like, they'll run Parker Ginobili. They do that motion thing where he kind of runs clockwise around the court to catch the ball, and then they immediately get into a pick and roll. The Memphis offense is just so slow. Like, every action takes an additional 2.5 seconds. It's like a lag on an internet video show. Like instead of moving directly into the pick and roll, coming off that curl or that rub screen, it's like they wait, then they set up again. It's just, I feel like if you're playing deep against Memphis, you have these constant lovely little breaks to sort of catch your breath and reset. And it's just something I noticed the other day against Indiana. It's just they give the defense every opportunity to reorient. And
yeah,
I think
They're resting on offense so that they can chase down every loose ball and smother you on defense is what it almost seems like. All right, we're out of time almost for the entire show, so we got to go. But Kevin, this was awesome. Thanks for swinging by.
Thanks for having me.
All right, that is Kevin Arnovitz from ESPN True Hoop, and you can follow him at Kevin Arnovitz. All right, dagger smash noted. Let's run through it. I got my dagger, and this is on the on-off rating for Joe Johnson, care of basketballreference.com. Joe Johnson, not an especially dynamic player, but a vital one to the Nets' very good offense. When he sits, according to Basketball Reference, they are at 97 points per 100 possessions, which is Wizards level, last in the league. And when he is on the court, they are at Thunder level, best in the league. And that really is the case, especially when he plays with Keith Bogans, because that's when they have 3 shooters on the court. And when you have 3 shooters, it makes a huge difference. That is the Coromano's rule of 3. That's my dagger.
You've always been touting this Joe Johnson bandwagon. I'm not sure if we should trust you with such small sample sizes in your Joe Johnson love.
I don't believe that. I don't believe that's a fact at all.
I don't believe that's a fact. I expected you to go when he sits, he's still dribbling. I seriously thought that was gonna follow that statement. My smash, and that is a good point by Beckley. I just want to put that out there. I'm just teasing, but my smash is about people on Twitter and a pet peeve, which is that I don't mind if you correct me or if you correct Zach. Zach and I have bitched to each other about this. I don't mind it. Just be correct when you're correcting. Because then when you make a correction and I look up the correction of me and I find out that I was actually correct in the first place, then I have wasted time. Now I'm angry. This is something that happens every day where you say some sort of statistic or you say something and somebody goes, actually that's not true, and then you have to find it. Is it really too much to ask, internet people, that if you're going to tell somebody that they're wrong, you be correct in the correction? I don't know. It's a problem. It's a problem. It's a bad internet problem.
If Ethan would allow things to go on the record on GChat, my GChat records would confirm that it is every day that this happens because he GChats me every time it happens.
Wait a second, Beckley. There's a difference in being an editor and being a guy who tries to be your editor only to be incorrect.
All right, just saying.
I would also like to crap on fans right now. There's a I think I haven't looked at it, but just what I gathered from Twitter, he had the top 25 players under the age of 25, and John Wall wasn't on it. And Wizards fans are going crazy. And I guess my question is, if you like John Wall on your team and you think he's a really good player and you want him on your team, does it matter if anybody else thinks he's great? Like, as long as you're happy with the guy, I think that should be like everyone should be allowed to have the opinion that maybe he's not one of the top 25 players, or maybe he was just forgotten because he had a knee injury. But if you like him, that's all that should matter to you.
Yes. It's a ridiculous thing from Rubio's #1 booster to be complaining.
I like Rubio. I don't care if you don't like Rubio. I like him. I want him on the Wolves.
Well, also, if you're an attempt
slander and see if you just never respond.
Test it out, internet. Correct him on something. Tell him that Ricky Rubio actually has some amount of assists that he doesn't have. Like, did you know that he's averaging 1.5 assists for his career, Zach?
I may stop my tweeting of Back to the Future just long enough to correct them.
I see. I think if you're a true Wizards fan, you should know that John Wall could make that list, but the Wizards are turning him into somebody who can't, and that's what's happening there. That's a distinction you should make as a Wizards fan. You should know enough to know that they're creating a player who's not going to be in the top 25.
That's so sad to say. All right, well, HoopSpeak Live, 92nd episode where we finally come out with it with our loathing of our fans and basketball fans everywhere. Roger Bain, why don't you take us out?
I taught my bird to to whistle like a referee. I can make a free throw when I'm down on one knee. I've been a fan of basketball since I was 5. Now I am a fan of HoopSpeak Live. Hilarious analysis of mystifying trope. An angel with a cudgel breaking bubbles of soap. Like honeybees buzzing around a hive. Everybody buzzing about HoopSpeak